We kissed while catching them. The shade on the coffee cup wasn't hers. Tessa wears coral when she wants to look awake, the easy pink that photographs like a smile. The mark on the inside of my mug that morning was velvet red, movie red, visible even after I rinsed it under the tap and rubbed with my thumb. It clung, stubborn as a secret. I told myself it was a glitch in the detergent, a trick of light. I drank anyway, and the coffee tasted like I'd stirred in a rumor. Tessa came out of the bedroom in a silk blouse I'd never seen. It draped off one shoulder as if it had been designed by gravity. She kissed my cheek and reached for the mug I'd already washed. "You're up early," I said. "Inventory day," she said. She runs a small design studio, which is to say she runs on chaos that looks elegant from a distance. She tucked hair behind her ear and glanced at the time she wasn't nomming. "Dinner out. I'll text. Don't wait." "Where are you inventorying? Your office or—" I let the sentence trail, hoping it would trip over something true. "Studio, then fabric warehouse. Might be late," she said, and smiled like we were both acting in a scene the audience already knew the ending to. After she left, our apartment smelled faintly of cedar and something unfamiliar, a cologne with the confidence to make space in other people's rooms. I opened a window and it left in no hurry. At the shop, my quiet little kingdom lined with books and spill-proof pens, the day obeyed. Contracts. A client who thought the law would forgive him if he asked politely. Emails that dressed up as emergencies to feel important. Between calls, I pulled at loose threads. Late nights that didn't fit with early mornings, a joke Tessa had told twice but from different angles that read on the cup. Each thread tugged another. The shape that emerged wasn't proof, it was posture. My marriage had begun to stand like someone ready to sprint. At noon my phone lit. A message from an account I didn't recognize. "I think your wife and my husband are together. If I'm wrong, you can hate me. If I'm right, meet me. 6 p.m. tonight, the green door back room." No flourish, no name. The profile photo was a rectangle of sky. I stared at it long enough to write a whole backstory that made me noble. Then I wrote back. "Who are you?" "A beat. Lena. Don't worry, I'm as terrified as you." The Green Door was one of those speakeasy bars that pretends to hide so its regulars can pretend to be in on something. The florist in front sold white roses to men who left with them slung over their shoulders like luggage. Behind a wall of private event signage, a lacquered hallway led to a room that smelled of citrus and sound check. Lena was waiting in a corner booth under a chandelier that had decided not to be subtle. She stood when I approached. She had that look certain women have, like the light itself wanted to sit closer. Dark hair tucked behind one ear, a dress that admitted to being a dress and not a costume, eyes that were brave because they had to be. "Eli?" she asked. "Yes," I said, and only after made sure I was. She gestured to the seat opposite. "Thank you for coming. I rehearsed 10 openers. They all sounded like bad podcasts." "Start with the one that hurts least," I said. She did not waste words. "My husband is Theo. He's a choreographer. Precision is his religion, but he leaves a trail when he thinks nobody is watching. Receipts, late-night calendar holds. A hint of cedar in our hallway that isn't ours. Last week he left his iPad at home. His messages with a T were affectionate. Just an initial." "Not for long," she said, and the corner of her mouth tried on a smile and took it off. He wrote the rest of her name in a draft email like he wanted to see how it looked. "Tessa." The chandelier hummed. Somebody in the back tested a sax in minor key, and even that note felt like an alibi. "I don't have proof," Lena added quickly. It could be innocent and intense residency. It could be me connecting dots that were never on the same page. I thought if I watched alone, I would make up the ending. If I watched with you, I'd correct the grammar, I said, because my body uses jokes as sandbags when the water rises. She exhaled something almost like a laugh. I booked a booth with a view of the dance floor. They're supposed to come for a donor's after-rehearsal thing. If they're just colleagues, I will apologize until my throat is a desert. If they're, then we decide whether we're the kind of people who make theater in public. I finished. The waitress appeared without being called, the way guilt does. I ordered whiskey I didn't need. Lena ordered ginger ale and held the cold glass to her throat for a second, like she was trying to lower a fever. They could walk in any minute, she said, and the sentence made the air tighter. They did, Tessa first. She wasn't with Theo. She was with a small storm of assistants in fashionable sneakers and schedule-shaped faces. She moved through the room like someone who knows the map is inside her. Theo followed a breath later, alone, scanning the crowd for the part of the night with his name on it. He had the posture of a man whose body has been agreed with by rooms. He and Tessa didn't go to each other. They orbited, then intersected at the bar as if their feet had already learned the steps. Lena's hand found the edge of the table and gripped. She didn't look at me and I didn't look at her. We looked the way people look at a cliff, jaws set, eyes trying to measure the fall. What I saw would never be admissible in any court and would convict them anyway in mine. Theo leaned in. Tessa laughed with her head tipped back, the laugh that used to be for my bad impersonations. She touched his sleeve in a way that says nothing to the untrained eye and a paragraph to the person who once recognized your footsteps by sound alone. They stood closer than colleagues need to stand, but farther apart than lovers who don't care about the room. It was the middle distance of people who have practiced not being obvious. Maybe it's nothing, I said, which helped nobody. Maybe they like the same playlists. Lena looked at me then, really looked, and whatever softness her face had chosen to allow slipped for a second into something steel. "Let's test nothing," she said and stood. "What are we doing?" I asked, already following. "We are going to dance," she said. "I don't dance." "You do if you want to stand near them without starring," she said. "Smile, Eli. Nobody is supposed to be sad at a party where nobody confesses anything." On the floor, the band found a pulse that made the room sway whether it meant to or not. Lena stepped close, not indecent, just decided. Her hand slid into mine like we had agreed at some earlier meeting. Her other hand found my shoulder. I placed my palm at the small of her back in the safe place strangers are allowed to touch, and felt how quickly safe becomes a more complicated word. "We're surveillance," she whispered, the word grazing my ear. "We also happen to be very convincing." We moved. I don't remember the steps because they weren't steps. It was more like a conversation my body had been meaning to have with someone. Weight, breath, the distance between two mouths that know math but pretend they don't. Lena's perfume wasn't the kind that announces itself. It arrived second, like a line of dialogue that becomes important later. The rhythm guided us in gentle circles. We turned, and in each turn I saw Tessa and Theo at the bar, their heads tilted toward each other, a private weather system inside the noise. "Left," Lena murmured, and I guided us left. "Pause," she added, and we paused. To anyone else, we were a couple indulging tradition. To us, we were binoculars with a heartbeat. Tessa's hand brushed Theo's wrist. He rested his palm on the bar next to hers, not touching, and my body felt that not touch like a string being plucked. It wasn't lewd. It was worse. It was careful. "Do you want to stop?" Lena asked, so close I could feel her words more than hear them. No, I said, and my voice surprised me with its steadiness. I want to know the shape of the thing that hurts me. Then hold me, she said, like you mean it but not forever. I did. We swayed through two songs that pretended to be one. At some point the chandelier dimmed and somebody louder than the band laughed, and the bartender built a little mountain of lemons. We orbited Tessa and Theo without bumping them, moons keeping our disasters tidy. When Tessa finally checked her phone, probably my last message about dinner, and Theo leaned in too close to read over her shoulder, Lena let her cheek rest against my jaw. "I'm sorry," she said. "You seem like someone who returns his shopping carts." "I am," I said. "You seem like someone who keeps plants alive." "I do," she said, "even the finicky ones." We stopped when stopping felt like the bravest thing to do. Back at the booth, we watched them drift to a table with donors and dancers, all elbows and dazzling intentions. Theo stood when Tessa did and touched the small of her back to guide her around a chair. The gesture was nothing until you looked at the way her breath caught before she pretended it hadn't. "What now?" I asked. "Now we don't make scenes," Lena said. "We make plans." "Plan me." "I'll go home and ask a question with room in it for the truth. You do the same. If they choose the truth, we decide whether we can live with it. If they choose theater, we cut the run short." The waitress arrived like she'd been cast as fate and asked if we wanted anything else. We both shook our heads, and she left us the bill with the courtesy smile you give people who look like they just walked out of a story they don't want to discuss. At the door, Lena didn't reach for me, and I didn't reach for her, and the space between those non-reaches felt like a thing you could stand on if you needed to cross. "I should say it," she said. "What?" "That I noticed you before I needed an accomplice," she said. "At a fundraiser last winter. You were holding Tessa's coat in a way that looked like you trusted it to come back. I thought, that's a man who believes in hangers." "Romance isn't dead," I said, and we both smiled, not because it was funny but because our mouths remembered. Outside, the air stroked our faces cool. The florist had closed, the roses slept upright. The street was the kind that teaches loneliness to be polite. Lena reached up, no rush, no warning, and touched my collar where the fabric meets the neck. "What are you doing?" I asked, and I didn't step away. "Fixing your witness protection disguise," she said, and smoothed it. Her fingers lingered the way thoughts do at red lights. Then she leaned in and put her mouth to mine. It was not a hungry kiss. It was the opposite of theft. It was two people who had been brave enough to stand in a fire together and wanted to mark the moment on their bodies without burning anything else down. Soft, steady, a hello disguised as a goodbye. Her hand cupped my jaw. My hand found the back of her shoulder. Neither of us tried to perfect it. We gave it just enough to be honest and not enough to be a mistake we couldn't live with. When she let me go, the night felt like it had noticed. "We shouldn't," I said, "because confession is a habit like any other." "We didn't," she said. "We practiced for when we have to choose." She walked to a taxi without looking back. I stood under the sign for hydrangeas and tried to remember how to breathe. At home, our apartment looked like it always does when nobody's lying. Neat, warm, a lamp left on like a roommate. Tessa came in an hour later, heels in hand, blouse folded over her arm like modesty. "How was inventory?" I asked. "Exhausting," she said. She didn't look at me long, the way people don't look at bright things when their eyes are tired. "You ate." "I had a drink with a friend," I said, all true, not enough. She set her bag down carefully, like it held something that might make a decision for us. When she looked up, she had selected the part of her face that asks for mercy. "Eli," she said, and my name did a slow ache in my chest. If I tell you something and it's messy, do you want it anyway? Yes, I said. If I tell you something and it's small and precise, do you want it anyway? Yes, she said. We sat at the table like people who share a mortgage and dreams with slightly different addresses. Tessa talked first. It wasn't a confession of grand romance, no thunderclap. It was a story of attention that had been misfiled, an experiment in feeling framed correctly, how a hand on your back can become a whole world if you feel off the map. I didn't sleep with him, she said. I haven't. I wanted to know if I could be someone I'm not sure I ever was. That's the ugliest way I can say it. I told her about the message, about Lena's careful eyes, about the dance we pretended to belong to. I told her about the kiss without writing it in italics. I told her I wanted to be the man who returned his shopping cart even when the parking lot is a storm. We decided nothing final that night. We made promises that could live in a room with our sadness. Counseling, calendar honesty, no more rehearsing intimacy with people who aren't invited to our kitchen table. I slept facing the window. She slept facing the door. In the morning, we found each other in the middle like we used to, not because a movie told us to, but because the sheet was cold at the edges. Days are not cured by speeches, but they stack. We started stacking them carefully. We took walks after dinner where we practiced asking questions without rushing the answers. When our hands brushed, we let them stay overlapping, an agreement that did not need a notary. Sometimes we were good. Sometimes we were quiet. Sometimes we had to remind each other that secrets shrink in open air. I saw Lena once more, weeks later, outside the theater where Theo's company was staging a new piece about gravity and other lies. She stood under the poster looking like she taught herself not to cry and had learned it well. We didn't touch. "How are you?" she asked. "Returning my carts," I said. "Good," she said. "I'm tending the finicky plants." We smiled, and in the space between us, a night bloomed where two people had danced so they wouldn't drown and kissed so they'd remember they didn't want to. Sometimes when I wash the coffee mugs, I still check the rims for the shade that isn't ours. Old habits don't die, they agree to take longer routes. Tessa leans against the counter, watching me like she's learning a language we forgot we spoke. She smells like the cedar we own. When I dry my hands, she steps in and slips her palm beneath my shirt, warm against the road of my spine, and the world narrows to the length of an embrace. It isn't a movie. It's the part after the credits when the lights come on, and the people who stay understand that this is where it matters. We kiss like an apology and a promise. We do narrate it. We don't practice for other rooms. We hold one breath too long and let go together. That's how we chose in the end, not with grand finales, with 1,000 small, careful beginnings.